this is the story. So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Trightmare, and I currently live in St. Louis, but I grew up in the Detroit metro area. That's where I'm from, and that's where I caused a lot of trouble when I was a kid. Some of the trouble that we got into is called urban exploring, and that's where you basically trespass on property, mostly industrial property, and broken down factories, old... Maybe I should turn that off. Thank you, follower. I'm going to turn that notifier off right now. I'm going to turn the notifications off. Just for now, okay? Just so it doesn't break my story. Okay. So, but thank you. I appreciate all those follows. So urban exploring is basically where you trespass in old broken down factories and other kinds of industrial places and insane asylums, old insane asylums. There's an insane asylum called Eloise, which really is what this story revolves around. But for you to understand why I was in the situation that I was in is that we would go urban exploring a lot. And we would often look up ghost stories online, and we would go to those places. We would just like look up haunted Michigan, haunted buildings in Michigan, blah, 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 haunted cemeteries, haunted places. And we would go there, among other things. We would go there and we would just kind of walk around, and we would want to see something, right? We would go to like the factories and stuff for the excitement, but we went to Eloise, which is one of the largest mental institutions in Southeast Michigan, and we broke in, went up to the top and climbed around on old broken down. The building was dilapidated. The building was condemned, so it was quite dangerous. So there's multiple risk factors, right? There's the chance of seeing something of the unknown. There's a chance of seeing something of the supernatural, but there's also a chance you might die. I remember one time we went to a paper mill and one of our friends fell into a sinkhole from a burned down paper mill, and it was dangerous, yes, but exciting even more so. So we frequented this cemetery that was near the Eloise Mental Institution. And if you look up the history behind Eloise, you'll see that it's kind of messed up. In the 1970s, they let everybody out. They just kind of ran out of money, so they let all of the committed patients out onto the streets of Westland, Michigan, which is very strange. One of the other strange things about Eloise is that a lot of people died there. There was a lot of experimental medication going on around the turn of the century, and electroshock therapy, food deprivation, a lot of things like that. And Eloise was one of the foremost researchers in a lot of that experimental psychological research. So needless to say, a fair number of people ended up dying there. So because of that, they had to do something with the bodies, because these people were often insane people or homeless people taken off the streets. And since the prisons were overcrowded around the Detroit metro area, they were given a new place because of their mental instability or perceived mental instability. They were given a new home in the Eloise Mental Hospital, where then they're even some sane people were experimented on. So needless to say, these people had no families. They really had no one who cared for them, who wondered where they were, and they weren't accountable. Nobody was accountable for these people's lives. So when they died during the experimentation, there were mass graves, okay? They were unmarked graves. Now, I don't mean that they were without marking, but I do mean that these graves did not have the markings of the individuals' names. They were not personalized graves at all. They were numbered, and they were mass graves. So anywhere from 20 to 50, sometimes even 100 people would be buried in the same hole in the ground. And it wasn't on the grounds of the mental institution. There wasn't enough room. Eloise was connected by a series of underground tunnels, which took up a lot of space. So they couldn't bury people on the premises. Across Michigan Avenue, you may have heard of Michigan Avenue, very famous thoroughfare that goes all the way from like pretty much Detroit to Chicago. It breaks up now, but it used to go all the way, right? So Anyway, very famous thoroughfare. And across Michigan Avenue from Eloise, there was an empty field. And that's where they decided to bury these people in these mass graves. Now, that's how the story goes, so to speak. You'll find that story on the internet several places. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to find out if that was true. So we go to Eloise. We went inside Eloise several nights in a row during summer and high school. I think I was a junior, 10th grade, 11th grade. And we went inside of Eloise and we went into the tunnels, the parts that weren't flooded, and we investigated. Eloise itself was very cool. So what we were doing then is we were like, where are these unmarked graves that I keep hearing about? Where are these unmarked graves at? And so we went across the road, and there were barbed wire fence all across a very large field. And so we throw a leather jacket over the barbed wire fence, and we're climbing up. We're climbing up over this barbed wire fence and exploring this field. So we find in this field, after looking for about 15, 30 minutes, we find these graves. We find these unmarked graves, and they were very small chunks of concrete with little copper labels on the top that said 315, 314, 313, and they were spaced out probably about 50 or 60 feet from one another. We found these unmarked graves. Now here's the weird part. There was a cemetery right next to this field with all these unmarked graves. So one thing that made perfect sense is that we went over to the graveyard that was adjacent to the field. I mean, like, the fence met. So at the end of the field where all these unmarked graves were, you would see the fence and you could hop it and you'd be in an actual public graveyard, and it was marked as such. And so we went into the graveyard and we realized these graves are from just about when Eloise opened. So they started burying people with their names and everything. And it also served as a graveyard for the local city. But there were patients in there, and a lot of them from the time around where Eloise opened, you'd notice more and more headstones with those years and more after, right? It all made sense. That whole 2 or 3 square mile plot was all a gigantic graveyard. So this enticed us. We found the secret. It was confirmed. The stories that we read online were true. So we felt that this was pertinent. We felt that this was a powerful spot. Certainly was creepy, but when you're rolling in a group of 10 kids with flashlights, things aren't as scary. So this is what we started doing. The graveyard adjacent to that field it was very small graveyard, surprisingly small. And it just had a horseshoe road. So you could, it was 1 car width wide. You could go from one side to the other in a horseshoe fashion, right? So we went there fairly often. We went to this graveyard fairly often when we were bored. When we were bored, hey, you want to go to the graveyard? Yeah, let's do it. Hey, you bored? You want to go to the graveyard? Yeah, let's do it. Maybe we'll see something. And time after time, we didn't see anything. We kept going all summer long that year. Until one night. Until one night. So it was about August, about mid-August. And a lot of cops would frequent this graveyard because it was closed after dark. You weren't allowed to go into the graveyard after dark, and if the cops would catch you, they'd kick you out. So this is what we did. Every time that we went to the graveyard, we would drive right past it. We would drive right past it to see if there were any cops in there or any people walking around, because it was a famously haunted graveyard. People would come from all over the United States to film in that graveyard, to walk around that graveyard. And so we did our drive-by. Nobody was in there. And sometimes people were in there, so it was odd. So we do our drive-by, And there's a street light. It's right off of a thoroughfare, right in the middle of a neighborhood. And there's a street light right there at the beginning of the graveyard. And it normally shines light right in there. You can see fairly well. This time, when we drove past the graveyard, it was oddly dark. Very dark in there. The street light was still on, but we couldn't really see in there. And the only reason I knew that it wasn't just me who was having difficulty seeing is as we drove by, everybody kind of had this sound, you know, like when people are stressed out or people are getting the shivers, they make that little, that little sound, little shake. Everybody did that at once. And we even commented on it. We were like, what? Okay, so you guys are getting the chills right now too. You guys, it's like darker than normal, right? And we had a little conversation. It was so noticeable that it was worth mentioning. And we mentioned it without solicitation. And we were all like, oh, okay, maybe this will be good. Maybe this will be the night. So we were excited. So we turn, we do a U-turn and we turn back around. And we go approximately halfway through the horseshoe. So we park the car at the middle of the horseshoe that goes through the graveyard. This is the street. This is the street in the neighborhood. And we pull in and we park the car right in the middle. Now here's the thing. We know that somebody's going to try to scare us, right? It happens every time. People go, rah! When it's dead silent and we're waiting. People go, wah! And they try to scare you. So we do this. We have rules. No keys in the ignition of the car. So first things first, we put that car in park, we turn it off, we take the keys out, and we throw them in the middle of the car. No keys in the car. Second thing is, we talk, we have that conversation. We say, everybody just shut up. Don't say a word. Don't try to scare. Don't do anything like that. We're just going to sit and we're going to listen and we're going to watch. And that's what we did. So everybody goes quiet. We have the conversation. Yeah. We heard it all before. Shut up, guys. Just shut up. The vehicle that we were in was a minivan. Minivan with driver's seat, passenger seat, captain's chair with a space in the middle, and then a bench seat in the back. I was the only person in the back of the van. I was the last person on the bench seat. There was driver, passenger, captain 1, captain 2 chair in the back, the middle. And so everybody's staring out the window closest to them. Passenger staring out the right, guy and the captain on the right hand staring out the right, driver's looking out the left, the captain behind him's looking out to the left too. So we're just sitting and we're just watching. And I'm looking to the left and I'm looking to the right. We're just quiet. We're just waiting. We're just hoping to see something. So somebody stirs. It's the front passenger. He goes, "Did you see that?" And nobody says anything. They just look. We're looking out his window. "What'd you see?" Someone asks. He says, "I don't know. I think I saw something go behind that tree." There's a tree right next to him. So we look and we wait. Is something going to come out from behind that tree? Nothing happens. All is quiet. So gradually, you drift off. It's quiet. You're in a graveyard at night. You're just looking around. You drift off. You're looking somewhere else. And he does it again. No. I really think I've seen something. Guys, I'm not fucking around. Just look. Wait. Just look. We all look. Nobody says anything this time. We believe him. There's honesty in his voice. So we stare. Minutes go by. And nothing. So we drift. You're just kind of sitting there in quiet, just staring, just watching. But I'm getting weirded out because next, the guy in the captain's seat behind the passenger in the front, he says it this time. No. Dude, there's a person out there messing with us. That's got to be a person. I'm not even scared. That's got to be a person. And I was like, well, what if it is? Okay, it's highly probable. We're in the middle of a highly populated neighborhood. Maybe it's some drunk guy. What should we do? Should we go? They're like, no, I don't know. I don't even know. So we stop and drift off into silence. But I'm getting nervous. I scare very easy. I don't want to be the last one in the bench seat. I just keep having this image run through my head of some guy, an actual human, some drunk guy coming up and slamming the window. That would scare me too much. I don't want to be in the back anymore. So I get out of the back and I push my back up against them. I push my back up against the seat and I'm like, guys, no, I don't like this. I don't like this. And then I get between them and I sit on the floor. I get between them and I'm sitting on the floor in between the two guys in the captain's seat because I can't take this. It's kind of scary. And I'm staring out the back window. There's a hill. It goes up and crests. Right about there, actually, there's a very big headstone. There's a very big headstone up there. It's really cool to look at. So that's what I do. I just kind of stare up there on that hill. That big headstone. Huge. I'm staring right at the top of it. There's a cross and a T. It's some nice stonework. It's really interesting to look at. So there I am. I'm just trying to stay calm. I'm just staring at that headstone. We're sitting in dead silence. Probably about 15 minutes or a half an hour goes by. And there's nothing. Nobody's seeing anything. But nobody's restless. Nobody wants to leave. And that's unusual for us. Usually after 15 minutes of not seeing a thing, we want to go. But this time, nobody said anything. We all just kept staring. Like we were enthralled by something different. The just strange feeling. And as I stare at that headstone, I just drift off. Nothing unusual. I'm just staring with my eyes locked. And I'm daydreaming about things that happened in my days, about girls that I might have liked. Something really weird happened, guys. When I started paying attention to what I was looking at, my eyes had shifted. My eyes weren't in the same spot that I left them. I saw something. My eyes were following something. And when I came back from my daydream, my eyes had moved. Up on the hill, out back behind the van, next to the headstone, there was something standing adjacent to it. I was no longer staring at the headstone. I was staring at what was standing next to it. And slowly but surely, I came to be aware that I was staring at something that wasn't there before. I was staring at something that wasn't there before, and that's all I knew at that point. So now I'm aware. Now I see something. I see a thing. I don't know what it is. Is it a ghost? That's my first question. I'm not scared. I'm interested at this point. Is this my time? Am I finally gonna see a ghost? I've been waiting my whole life for this. I was actually happy. So I paid attention and I stood up. I didn't stand, but I sat up and I paid attention now. I was kind of anxious. What is that? Is that actually a thing out there? No, don't say anything. Don't say anything until you know. And I stared. And it moved. Just a little bit. But it moved. I'm excited now. I'm excited now. What am I looking at? What is this thing? And the best way to explain it is that it kind of looked like a silhouette. Not really. It was just kind of a shape, really, at the distance at the top of that hill. I couldn't identify it other than the fact that it was darker than everything else around it. It was a dark spot at night. I've never seen that before. A dark spot, a moving dark spot at night. Didn't look like anything in particular. So I lock on and I wait. And time goes and it moves. It moves. It's coming down the hill. It's coming down the hill. It started up here and it's slowly moving. Ever so slowly down the hill. Down the hill it moves toward me. That's good. I thought it was the greatest thing. I'm actually going to get to see it up close. I'm going to be able to see what this is. It's coming. I'm happy. I'm excited. As it gets closer, I start to notice more about it. I start to notice that it is darker than everything else around it. It is. It's just kind of shapeless at first. And then I looked into the dark spot and I saw a little bit more. I don't know what it was I saw, but I saw a little bit more. Maybe a little bit of detail. And it got closer still. And as it got closer still, I could see it. It had started up here on the hill, and it was about right here. It was about here now. So now I can really see. It is somewhat of an outline of a head with some shoulders. But there's light from that street light that I told you about earlier. The scene is painted in white light. There's highlights and there's shadows, but within this space, just darkness. There was no light. There was nothing. But there was shape. Starting. There was shape. And there was movement. I could see it now. There was movement in the shape. It moved in a way that was entirely inhuman. It moved in a way that bothers me still to this day. It moved like this. I could see the outline of shoulders and a head, but I couldn't see anything else. It was strange, and it was like this. And as it got closer, it moved more erratically. And I fucking kid you not, I could start to make out details. Details that I didn't want to see. And the thing about it is, that I was not interested anymore. The hair on the back of my neck started to stand. And the whole time I was wondering, should I say something? Is this actually a ghost? That was the thing passing through my head the entire time. But the problem is, I wasn't asking myself that question anymore. Now it was a thing. It was real. And in a way that made me feel very uncomfortable. In a way that made my blood feel cold in my veins, in a way that made me feel for a second in my life like I might have had a soul inside of my body. And it was frozen solid. It was chilling. And I was scared. Not in my brain, but in my heart and in my soul. I was scared. I was just wondering a moment ago, was this a thing? And my adrenaline, before I even could think rationally about what I was seeing, I was scared. And I had fear for my life. Uncontrollable fear in my heart and my soul, but my brain was calm. And I knew what I saw was real. And I knew that I had to say something about it. So I did. I reached out my arm and pointed. And I said, hey, I see a ghost. I see a ghost right there. And everybody turns. And they go, you're fucking kidding me. No, can't be. And as I say it, as they say that, and as I finish my sentence, it's a ghost. Light. The intensity of a camera flash, there is light flashing before my eyes. And I can't see anything anymore. If you notice when your eyes adjust from the light to the dark, imagine a flash, the intensity of a camera flash going off in front of your very eyes in the darkness. When you're staring at something that's darker than the darkness around it. When you're so akin to looking into the darkness that there is no light. And suddenly there is. I'm blind. I can't see anything, but I do hear. And what I hear are the screams of everyone else in the van. Everyone's screaming, and I don't know what they're screaming about. I wasn't screaming, and I was staring right at it. So what was happening to them, I couldn't see. But I knew that in front of me, outside of the van, there was something coming towards me. There was something that scared the shit out of me coming towards me. And I couldn't see, and I heard screams. I was losing it. I was fucking losing it. Where did the light come from? And I regained my vision. And it's still there. It's closer now, but it's still there. And I say, fuck, what's going on? Fuck, guys, we gotta get out of here. And as soon as I say it, the flashes, they come again. And I'm blind. Nobody is stopping screaming. And I hear it. I hear, give me the fucking keys. Give me the fucking keys. And I hear people feeling around on the ground. I hear people feeling around on the ground for the keys. And they can't find them. They can't find the keys. And everybody's screaming and everybody's losing it. And suddenly you hear it. You hear that sound. I'm looking for my keys in order to make that sound, but I don't have them. So here it goes. You hear it. Scoop. They've got the keys. Someone has the keys. And you hear them throw. Somebody threw it. As I'm blind right now, blinded by some light, I can only hear. And that's why this is the most vivid detail I remember from this part. They grabbed the keys and they threw it up to the front. And then you heard him go, ka-shink. They were stuck up in between the window and the dashboard. So the kid You hear him feel around. You hear him feeling around for the keys. And he's got them. Shink. He picks them up. He scoops them up. He's got them. And you hear him fumbling. You hear him fumbling to get them into the ignition. And he's failing. He's failing to get them in. And then he's got it. He turns it over. And my vision during this time is almost back. I can almost see again. And the only thing that I'm doing during this time is looking, waiting to see how close is it gonna be when I can see. If it's right in front of me, I will die. Of fear. And it's still a ways out. I'm starting to see again, and it's still a ways out, but it's moving. It's moving in the way that it keeps moving, and I can't handle seeing it. What is it? Is it really there? I've just been blinded. Am I seeing it? I only wanted to know, am I seeing something? And after 3 tries, the car turns over. And you know that when you start a car, what turns on? The taillights. The taillights are on. That's good. That's red light. Now, any of you who are in the military, you know that when you want to see a detail in the darkness, what color light do you use? You use red. Red flashlights are used by the military in the dark for reading at night. Number 1, so you're not spotted. Number 2, because it shows more detail than white light. So, in the darkness, that is. So, the whole scene is now completely illuminated in red taillights. I can see everything incredibly clearly. But my question to myself was, is it still there? Is it still there? I'll be able to see it now. I'll be able to see it now. Is it still there? And I looked. And it was there. It was an absence of light. It was nothing in the middle of something that I could see so clearly. I could see every little detail of the world around me so clearly. And it was there. It was still there. And I didn't want it to be. And it was. And so we drove. Everybody's still screaming, but in this time I'm hollowed. In this time my heart and my soul feel so sad, so hurt. It was painful to look at it. It was painful to see. It was painful to know that there was a ghost. Or something, whatever the fuck it was. It was there. Beyond the shadow of a doubt. It was looking at me. There, staring. And we drove away. We drove away. And as we drove away, I could see it in the distance. As we traveled away, I could see it. Still there. Still and staring. And I wish I didn't see it. So we leave the graveyard. We're gone. And everybody in the vehicle is quiet. Nobody's saying a word. Until I say something. I just needed to know. Was I the only one who saw it? Did you see that? I asked. And they nodded. All of them nodded yes. And then somebody said, "What the fuck was that?" They said, "What the fuck was that light?" They saw the light that I saw. That's why they were screaming. That's why they were screaming. They saw that light. And I said, "Where did it come from?" And somebody said, "Well, I think it came from the vents. I think it came out of the air vents." And I looked up and behind me, I looked up and behind me, and there were 2 air vents there. That's where the light came from. However much that makes sense. They saw the light, and I said, okay, good. Okay, tell me you saw the ghost. You saw it. You saw it standing out behind the back. You saw it. No, dude. What the fuck are you talking about? No, guys. No. You saw it right behind. You looked in the mirror. You saw something. No, dude. We were just sitting staring out into the darkness until you said there was a ghost. And as soon as you said there was a ghost, these lights started flashing and we were freaking the fuck out. We thought the ghost was in the car with us. No. I said, no. It wasn't in the car with us. I saw it. It was behind us the whole time and you didn't see it. I was the only one that saw it. I was the only one that saw it. But they saw the light. And that was good enough for them to all be scared. But it was more for me. I was very scared. And as we were driving home, I started thinking, this is it. Every scary movie I've ever seen could be real now. I don't know what's real and what's not anymore. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do with my life? I can't sleep alone. Freddy Krueger's gonna get me in my dreams. I just saw a fucking entity, and now I don't know what the rules are. Is this like Freddy Krueger rules? If I fall asleep, is it gonna get me in my dreams? Am I gonna see it at the foot of my bed if I wake up at 3 a.m. at night? Is it gonna follow me? What are the fucking rules here? What is gonna happen to me? And I didn't want to be alone. I couldn't be alone. I was scared. In a way that is not healthy. In a way that is very real. Real in the worst way. I couldn't be alone. I thought it was going to get me. I thought it was right behind me. I thought it was there. And for 6 months, I moved in with my friends who I saw it. I moved in with them, and I didn't leave their side. I couldn't leave their side, and we talked about it, and we cried over and over again, and we talked about it so much until they didn't want to talk about it anymore. They didn't feel like there was anything to talk about anymore, and I was the only one left talking about it. Which made me feel like the odd man out. It made me feel bad. It made me feel alienated, and suddenly they didn't want me sleeping in the same bed as they didn't want me sleeping in the same bed. So you have to sleep on the floor now. You can't sleep on the futon with me anymore. You can't sleep in my bed anymore. You got to sleep on the floor, dude. Okay? And I just was scared all the time. And slowly I became okay. Slowly over the course of about 2 years, I became okay. But during my recovery period, some more things happened. The story does not end there that day. The story does not end. So always, for the next 2 years, I felt like something was constantly behind me. I felt like something was going to get me. I felt unsafe. I felt like I was never safe. I didn't know the rules of this world. I didn't know, is there a God? Is there a hell? What did I see? I don't know. I didn't know the rules. So I finally was able to sleep in my own room. Back in home, I moved back in with my mom, and I was able to start sleeping in my room again, okay? I was able to start sleeping in my room again when something else happened. So I lived in the attic of my house. We didn't have air conditioning, so the windows were open. Michigan, it doesn't have that hot of a summer anyway. So I got a TV on. I got all my lights on. I never turn the lights off, period. I can't be in the darkness. I can't be in the darkness. It will fucking get me, okay? It's darker than everything else, and I won't be able to see it coming. I can't be in the dark. So I was never in the dark. Never in the dark. So I'm going to bed with all my lights on. My windows are open and there's a breeze coming through the window. A breeze, a light breeze. It's blowing my drapes. And I'm relaxed. I'm in bed. That cold breeze is on my feet and I'm going to bed, baby. I'm relaxed. For the first time in about 2 years, I was relaxed for the first time. For the first time, I was relaxed in 2 years. This nice wind blowing on my feet. I'm laying in my underpants, stretched out on my bed, and here I am. I'm falling asleep. It feels good. I got a smile on my face. I'm happy. I'm relaxed. I'm okay. And my ceiling fan is not turned on. Something hits my ceiling fan. Hard smack. And I open my eyes and it's swinging. The ceiling fan was mounted and swinging in place. And I open my eyes and I see it. It's swinging. I heard something hard hit it and I see it swinging. And I wake up and I'm like, that's weird. What is there, like a bird in here? Did it fly in my window? Like, is there a fucking bird in here? What? I just want to go to bed, bird. And so I get up and I look. I look around the room like, where's that fucking bird or whatever? Like, did someone throw a note into my room? Was this one of my friends down on the ground throwing a note through my window and they hit my ceiling fan? Where's the rock with the note attached to it? Where's the pop bottle that they threw up there? Where is it? There wasn't anything. And as I was standing, like going through that thought process, I was just struck with fear. Uncontrollable fucking fear. I'm going from thoughts where, hey, I wonder if my friends are outside, to suddenly this. No, I can't. I run out of the room. I run out of the house. I am fucking gone. I'm fucking gone. And I call one of my friends and I call my girlfriend at the time. Pick me up now. Pick me up. I can't be alone. I was in the house alone. Pick me up. I can't be alone. That fear struck me, and it was the same fear where it felt like I had a soul for just a second, and that it was frozen fucking solid. And it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. It didn't end for a while, guys, but a few more things happened to me. A few more things happened. So one time, this is the period where I'm able to sleep in my room again. I go back to my room and I'm able to sleep. It's not a problem. It's not a fucking problem. I'm able to sleep in my room now. I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm getting braver. So one night, it's about 3 a.m. and I'm playing World of Warcraft. Summertime. Next summer. 2 summers after. I'm in my senior year by that point. And so I'm up playing World of Warcraft. It's like 3 a.m. And we had a phone, 3 house phones that were cordless house phones. A lot of people had cordless house phones. And I'm playing WoW and I'm having a good time. And it's 3 a.m. and I'm just having a good time. I'm not in voice chat. Nothing special is happening. I'm just leveling a character and I'm like, God damn, this is fun. And then the phone starts to go off, right? It starts to like go off. Okay, who's calling me? I'm excited. It's high school. People call you. That's the thing. Who's calling me? And midway through the ring, it stops. So it was like, and it like cut off mid-ring. And if you know cordless phones of the time, they would always finish the tone. If it starts playing the tone, it's going to finish playing the tone. So if it's going to go, it'll go, it won't go, it won't do that. And it did that. So that was odd. Now that was odd. So I'm like, oh, my first thought is, oh, phone, you just died. You need to replace your battery. And I pick up the phone and I look at it. And it's still on. It's still on, and it's still got full battery. It was sitting on the charger, for God's sake. It was sitting on the damn charger. And I pick it up, and it's silent. Like, it's silent for a second. And I'm looking at the screen, and there's a bunch of weird characters on it, like asterisks. Yeah? And I'm like, what are you doing, phone? Like, what's the deal? I need to go get the other one. And I'm like, okay. And then it starts going like this. It makes weird noises, like somebody's pressing the button. But if you had one of those phones, you realize if you press the button, it can only go so fast. So if I went and typed it that fast, it would only go beep, 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 beep. It wouldn't go beep, 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 and it started doing that in my hand, and it lit up, the LCD lit up, and it started to say things on it that it shouldn't have said. And then that feeling happened again. I was struck with an uncontrollable fear. I wasn't thinking, is this a ghost? I was relaxed, guys. I was relaxed. And it felt like somebody was right fucking behind me. And I ran again. I ran out of my house. And I had somebody pick me up. And the fear, it stayed with me. It lasted longer. It lasted till I was out of the house. It lasted longer. And it doesn't end there. As I would lay in bed in my room with my girlfriend at the time, I would see things. I would see shadows across my wall. Like if the sun was coming in through the window in the other room and there were shadows from my drapes on the wall, I would see it like somebody walked by. I would see it like somebody walked by, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and it wouldn't fucking stop. And I would get up and I would look, and there was nobody there. There was nobody there. And it got so bad that I decided to go back to the graveyard. And I went back. I went back to that graveyard, and I went up to that tombstone. And I laid on the ground, on my knees in front of it, and I asked for this to stop. I asked for it to stop. And I had a pretty good idea of why it was happening. See, the internet's a pretty wonderful place, and you can look up a lot of shit on the internet, like a summoning spell. So, when we were going and looking for ghosts, I would get sick and tired of not seeing something. So one time when I was in that graveyard, I looked up something on the internet and I read some fucking text out loud in the graveyard. I don't know if it was Latin, I don't know what language it was, but I read some fucking text. The time before I saw something that we visited there, I remembered, guys. I said a little summoning spell that I learned on the internet. The time before I saw it. A month later, I went back, and then I saw something. And this had to be why. This had to be why. I don't know what I said, I don't know what I did, but I fucking begged them. I stood in a graveyard and I said in plain English, I want to know that you are real. Come to me. Come to me. And I said other words in whatever language it was, and several spells that I just looked up on Google, and I said them all, and I was like, come on, prove to me you're real. And I had all the proof that I could possibly fucking handle. I couldn't handle any more proof. So I got down on my hands and my knees in front of that tombstone in the middle of the day, and I cried. I cried, and I've cried during this video, and if you think that's crying, you don't know what fucking crying is. I wept. Uncontrollably, I wept, and I said, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm sorry for what I've done. I don't want this anymore. Please spare me. I will never come back here again. I apologize for intruding. I apologize for everything. I don't know what I said. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And then I went to a church. I apologized at that grave, and I immediately got up and went to a church, a little chapel in Taylor, Michigan. A little chapel in Taylor, Michigan called the Rose Chapel, off of some back road in the middle of like a very rural part of town. It was called the Rose Chapel. And I went to the Rose Chapel. Nobody was in there. And I went there, and by the time I got there, it was night. So I left the graveyard and went straight to the Rose Chapel, and it was night. And I get out of my car, and I get out, and I go into that fucking empty church, and I prayed to God. I prayed to God. And I prayed to all of my dead relatives. My grandpa, my grandma, my dead cousin. I prayed for them to protect me against the evil that I had summoned, and that I was sorry that their afterlife would have to be wasted looking over someone as stupid as I am, but that if they loved me, that they could and should protect me. It's all I knew how to do. It's all I could possibly think of. I'm not very religious, but I was desperate for this to stop. I was desperate for it to stop, and I knew the only people who cared about me on the other side, it wasn't God. It wasn't God, but it was my family. So I prayed to them and to God for safe measure that I didn't know what I was getting into. And it stopped. And it stopped. It stopped, and I'm okay now. That is until I tell this story. I'm probably going to have a very hard time sleeping tonight. But thank you for listening. And be very, very careful about what you do with spirits. Be very careful about what you say in hallowed ground, and be careful about where you go at night, because you don't know what's fucking following you. And I'm telling you with 100% certainty, as a rational individual who has had years to dwell on this, I've had years to dwell on this, and it's real. So don't fuck around. It's not funny. And it's real. You never know what could be following you. And that's why Insidious is my favorite movie, because he has a ghost following him, but he survives. And that's why Insidious will always be my favorite movie, because I understand what that feels like. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the flashes, like post-traumatic stress disorder. And I don't know if it's still there, just waiting. I don't know if I'm haunted. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I can see the reminiscence of that flash. And I can't sleep. The end. That's my life.